What the hell? Why is this guy investigating me? I don't understand. What did I do? Oh, loiter in certain areas for far too long. See, that's discrimination. I was just hanging out. Like, come on. Seriously. Well, hello, everyone. Good evening. How are you? If you are here for the Big Brain stream, you're in the right spot. So, welcome to the Big Brain stream, where today we will be discussing discretion and corruption in the Wild West. For those of you that are unaware as to what this is, if you like video games, if you like relaxing gameplay, if you like bettering yourself as a person, and if you like learning, then this is for you. It's a fun way for me to talk about the subjects that I need to talk about on camera. And also, I'll hopefully meet some people along the way. So, what do I want to talk about today? Let's see if the controller wants to turn on. Come on. Can I unplug something? No? Why isn't it not working? Fuck. Hey, there it is. Okay. Ooh, almost walked off the cliff there. That would have been a great start. Anyways, we're going to use the Wild West as our backdrop tonight. Last week, we played Stardew Valley. This week, we are going to be playing Red Dead Redemption. Why? Because we're talking about discretion and corruption in the police. And so where a better place to talk about discretion and corruption than the Wild West with Arthur Morgan here. Just as a little aside, haven't played this game in a while. Not gonna remember the controls probably right off the bat. But discretion is something that, all police officers have. Why? Well, because they are out in the middle of, society. They're out interacting with potentially some really, really bad people. They need to be able to utilize different means of force or different means of what have you for any particular purpose. I need to get on this one. Is this my horse? Sure. So, you are unable to ride your horse in camp. Oh, how the hell do I get out of camp? Anyhow, discretion is necessary out in the wild, right? The wild. Because police officers don't have the luxury, I guess is the better term, to be able to call into their department for their commanding officer in order to ask permission to do things. So police officers are granted a tremendous amount of discretion in the field. Well, obviously, that can lead to, certain ethical dilemmas, right? I mean, if you're given unfettered access to decide, whether or not to arrest somebody, whether or not to utilize deadly force, obviously ethics is going to come into question. So, how do we ensure that, discretion doesn't kind of verge into a realm that we don't want it to be in, right? Specifically, one of those realms being like discrimination. Obviously, nowadays, at the forefront of nearly every American's minds is the discrimination by police officers amongst the general public. But there are other kinds of discrimination as well. There's sexual orientation discrimination, discrimination against race, national origin. I remember when national origin was the big boogaboo that everybody was talking about. And still is to a certain extent, but it seems to be race is the big one right now. We're going to see if maybe we can, see if we can find some examples of this discretion or discrimination that we are talking about. Hello. Who's this? I'm really close to his face right now. See, now that's actually a really good example of utilizing discretion, right? So I saw my friend getting his ass whooped, or his butt kicked, if you will. So you have my friend who was being attacked. I could have, being Arthur Morgan, drew down on that fellow who was attacking my friend and kill him. But I didn't. Why? Because Arthur, in that moment, probably didn't feel the need to because his friend wasn't in danger of being killed. Right? The use of deadly force wouldn't have been authorized. But that's just a really good example of Arthur utilizing discretion in an appropriate way. Maybe today we'll get him to use it in an inappropriate way just for funsies. So we talked about these forms of discrimination in which discretion can kind of prop up, right? Discretion can verge into discrimination in a couple ways, but how does discrimination kind of rear its ugly head? There's generally two ways, right? It can be either enforcing the law differently between different groups of people, or it can be by withholding protections of the law from various groups of people. So, for instance, let's see. Enforcing the law differently, right? If I were to discriminate, if I were a discriminating officer, right? I may see these guys here, and they seem like fine, genteel young men who are just, having a smoke, taking a break. Maybe I'm assuming that they're working on this little cottage here, and so they're just kind of taking a break. They're fine. However, we saw those fine, genteel young men hanging outside, the general store, but then say that, like, I see this hobo-looking dude here, right? This guy, however, even though he has that nice, well-coiffed set of hair, maybe I think he's a bum. Or a poor folk, or someone who is undeserving of my protection. And so in order to discriminate against him, one of the ways I can do is either, enforce the law differently towards him. One of those ways could be like to grab him and, pull him up. I can't remember how to do this. Let's see. How do I do this? Oh, I didn't want to pull a gun. There we go. Put that away, please. Nope, didn't want to do that either. Shit. Okay. And put that away. There it is. What? Okay. See, now the police are on to me. One of the reasons is because I am someone who just came into town and fired a gun. However, it's the Wild West, right? Now, see, they're kind of taking their merry old time coming over here. Why? Maybe, it's Valentine, guns get fired all the time, and they're not that concerned about what's happening, right? See, so that guy's investigating. He heard the gunshot. He's just kind of like, what's happening over here? Well, I'm just going to slowly walk away. Hopefully he doesn't see me. Or it could be because, the police are maybe discriminatory in the sense that, a drifter comes into town, a poor drifter, not one of the genteel folk who live in Valentine. No, these are the undesirable types that roll into town, and we need to go check it out, right? So that could be a form of discrimination, enforcing the law differently from person to person. Withholding protections of the law, maybe I can, I want to fight somebody so that I could show how the law is enforced differently. Oh, okay, so here we go. Watch this. See, so maybe I'm a discriminatory officer. I think this bum shouldn't be here, so I'm going to, tell him to get up, get off his ass, get back to work. Antagonize that guy. Could be, discriminatory, could be utilizing my discretion in an inappropriate way there. If I were an officer, that is. How do I throw a punch? I wanna again, we're trying to have a class here. We need to be able to fight somebody in order for class to work properly. We'll figure it out at some point, I'm sure. Anyways, that's just an example of how discretion can be utilized differently. Now, here again. Oh, see, he just again, and I'm a drifter. He's holding me up, right? Now he has a gun on me. I'm gonna run. Oh, and there they go, firing at me. So this, we're gonna talk about this in a little bit. Right now, I just have to serpentine. Firing at a running suspect that doesn't seem to be a danger to anybody. Utilization of your discretion in an unfortunate and inappropriate way, definitely. I really hope my horse catches up to me at some point. Bounty $61, excuse me? For what? What did I do? For shooting a gun off in the middle of town? That can't be right. Oh, they have like a tractor trailer thing coming after me? Oh boy, stop it. I'm not gonna kill I don't need that right now. I don't need that sort of heat. Come on, get on the horse, damn it. Arthur. What do you do? Why did you run from me, horse? Come on. Okay. You know what? Just kill me at this point. There it is. All right, so there's a good example. Just to pause here for a second, if you're enjoying this little discussion that we're having and you're not followed to the channel, please drop a follow. Every Tuesday night, I play games and I talk about subjects that I need to talk about for class. So I'm recording them for future use. And if you're not a student of mine, feel free to subscribe as well, because that will allow me to do more with these videos and go into more detail and maybe make this something to add on to my living. Well, while we respawn, let's move on. Obviously, that is a sort of profiling in a way, right? But the most dangerous form of profiling there is racial profiling, which is a big problem presently in America, if you haven't been watching the news recently. So racial profiling is essentially the idea that, a police officer will stop an individual simply because of the color of their skin or, the particular race or ethnicity that they appear to come from, right? It is different from utilizing aspects of that race, skin color, ethnicity, anything like that. It's different from utilizing those aspects as legitimate forms of identification, because if a bolo were to go out to call police, say, oh, there was a robbery here or there or whatever, right? But they may say, suspect was 6 foot tall, black male, whatever, right? That can be a descriptor, so long as it isn't the only descriptor and the only reason for stopping somebody, right? If you stop somebody and just because they match one of those descriptions, that's okay. But if you stop somebody, right, and because the only thing that they match in the description is the skin color, well, that edges on racial profiling. We're going to go down here. Yes. We're going to try and find our way to New Orleans, or at least this version of New Orleans in this town, in this game. Anywho, because then maybe we'll encounter a more diverse population. Oh. Sure. Mercy, what are you doing? Sorry, my dog is now crawled under my legs. Emerald Ranch. All right, yeah, sure. I'll take this lady there while we continue to talk. Discretion, however, can also be utilized in a dangerous way, just like we saw over in Valentine. Discretion in the use of deadly force. Now, generally speaking, police officers are allowed to use deadly force, and again, it's within their discretion. The reason being is that, again, there may be times in which they are faced with a situation in which, in order to survive the situation, they need to draw their weapon and attempt to end the threat through deadly force. That is, in most circumstances in which that happens, completely appropriate, right? And it's almost hard for me to kind of criticize any police officer who decides to use deadly force, because I've never been in a situation in which I needed to use deadly force. So how the hell am I the one to judge? Well, I'll tell you, because I'm an attorney. It's my job to judge. When it comes to the utilization of deadly force, there are a couple rules that need to be followed. First of all, let's be clear. Use of deadly force is still an extreme minority in the percentage of all, police interactions that the public has with them. It is, I believe, less than 1% of all interactions, right? There are millions and millions and millions and millions of interactions that the public have with the police every year, Of that, there are maybe a couple thousand use of force incidents. And then of those couple thousand, generally speaking, in the US, about 1,000 people every year are killed by the police. What you hear about are the ones that are fishy, we'll say. That's to put this conversation into perspective, okay? Because just because we're talking about a minority of cases, and just because we're talking about, or the ones that make the media or what have you, are the ones that sound fishy, is not to minimize the fact that there may still be a systemic issue within the police, within the United States, that needs to be talked about. Well, why would I say that, right? Why would I, after just going on about how, use of force incidents are so rare, why would I ever say it's a problem that we need to be talked about? Well, very simply, the issue is, ooh, wait, is this the fence? Can I? I think I can do something. I think I can get gold from this guy. Stop it. How do I get off my horse? There it is. Yes. Sell this gold bar for $500. Please, take it. Arthur Morgan has clearly done a lot of robbery in the last time that I played him. What's this? Platinum pocket watch. Well, yeah, fuck the gold one. Keep that one. And Arthur Morgan is now swimming in quiche. Arthur Morgan is a flush with cash. Anyways, we are on our way again down to the Nolans area of this map and talking about the well-publicized, issues, right? When it comes to these, again, rare use of force incidents, there it is, that's what I need. The problem is that when you look at it statistically, okay, like I said before, 1,000 or so Americans or 1,000 or so people are killed by the police every year. Of that 1,000 or so people, about 50% of them, and these are rough numbers, okay, about 50-some% of them are white, and about 40, close to 50-some% are black. There's a smaller percentage there of, other minorities. But again, it's like 50 white, 50 black, just thereabouts. Well, you may be looking at that. Well, what's the problem, right? It's clearly, it's distributed evenly. No, it fucking isn't, okay? The problem is that it is a disproportionate ratio that, of black Americans being shot by police. Why do I say that? Well, because when you talk about it in proportionally, right, you have the white Americans make up, yes, about 50% of the population. But black Americans only make up somewhere in the teens. It's like 14 to 17%, somewhere around there. With that, right, that disproportional number, that's where you get from, right? If black people only make up about 14 to 17% of the population, why are 50% of the shootings consist of black Americans? Well, that's the issue. Why does it happen? Well, there are two arguments. The first argument being that, well, black people commit more crime than white people, and I call bullshit on that. And I think most genuine people would call bullshit as well. The more likely argument, and this is the one where, again, people don't like to talk about it, the use of force being utilized against groups of people combined with what is essentially racial profiling. That is the issue. There is an unconscious bias against black Americans. Because of this, right, black Americans have been living with this reality for, years and years and years. Because of this, black Americans, when interacting with the police, are clearly wary of that, are aware of the statistics, are aware of the problems that they have faced for years. So how would you respond? Put in the shoes of a black American who's being approached by an officer, knowing full well that, you are more likely to end up in the ground in that situation than a white person. Well, you may go on the defensive. You may even be antagonistic. You may be unwilling to cooperate with any sort of request that is asked of you. Am I going the right way? I wouldn't. I don't think I would. I am nearly translucent. So when it comes to talking about this, I feel a little underqualified. But being simply aware of the statistics should be really all you need to kind of be able to intuit some of the issues that are present. Moving on. All right, let's move on to, well, what happens after force is used? Okay, how is a determination made on whether or not that force was appropriate or not? generally the procedure is that there's a brief investigation that's made by internal affairs into the mindset of the officer and the incident itself, and then it's generally the officer who had to utilize deadly force is given some time, and then they go back on the job after it's determined that they haven't been significantly affected by taking someone's life. Ooh, there's a fire. Ooh. But if I go there, we're going to get into some trouble. Let's avoid that right now. Use of force instances that do, say it raises a couple red flags. So what happens then? Well, then an investigation, like a real full-blown investigation that would be completed by a district attorney or an attorney general, discovered a gang camp. Enemy gang camps can be a good source of supplies. I want to. Ooh, it looks like they may have murdered some people. So we are going to be a good police officer and encounter them. They may kill me, but we'll see. Okay, so they're running, which is fine. But they killed a bunch of people, so I'm going to utilize my force. Oh, geez, I hit him. Come on. Oh, there's more coming. Oh, boy. Gee, there's a lot of them. Shit. Okay, we're getting out of here. Utilization of force, maybe not wise. So, say that incident comes up. Utilization of force in that incident, right? You had two guys. Two guys who were, creepy, we'll call them. And then, they run away from me. At first, it doesn't seem like, anything's wrong. And then I see that, oh, well, there are dead bodies in the camp. I make the decision to pull my gun and draw down on them to utilize deadly force. Problem is, they were running away. Did I have any evidence that maybe they were a threat to other people? Did they had any weapons on them, right? These are determinations now that would be made by an investigating prosecutor and a grand jury. They are a great tool for criminal investigations, don't get me wrong. But the problem with grand juries in incidents like this, I am going into some creepy area right now, and what happens is that the grand jury and the investigating prosecutor looks at these situations after the fact, okay? They get to look at the situation with the benefit of hindsight. The police officer, during the confrontation, did not have that benefit, did not have that luxury. That's a giant alligator. So there is kind of, an inherent problem with investigating after the fact, right? But what ends up needing to be done is that the investigators need to kind of intuit as to what the mindset of the officer was at the time, and was the force justified in the sense that it was utilized only after the officer had made a determination that in that moment their life or someone else's needed protecting, and the only way to protect it was through the utilization of deadly force. Well, therein lies a problem, because you must look at the situation as the officer saw it in that moment. That is clearly an issue, again, when you have the benefit of hindsight. If you have the benefit of hindsight is 20/20. You can see everything. No, that person did not have a gun, it was a remote control. Or no, that was a toy gun, right? Or they did in fact have a gun, but it was unloaded, right? The officer in that point in time doesn't know any of that, right? So grand juries are imperfect at determining whether or not a police officer is justified in utilizing deadly force. And imperfect is kind of like, that's being polite about it. That's generally what happens after a utilization of force incident. Oh, there's more of those gangs. Oh boy, okay. See? Use of force. So it looks like they were robbers and they killed these people, but I was a little too late. So let us move on. Let us move on to another issue that is very close to discretion, and that is the issue of corruption. Corruption can take many forms. okay? And usually revolve around the use of discretion. What kind of corruption there is? What are the forms that it can take? Oh boy, what the hell, man? See, now that was an appropriate use of force, most likely, as Arthur Morgan was being shot at the time. I better get out of here, though, before somebody else comes around. Different types of corruption: gratuities, kickbacks, overtime schemes. You can have, now these are all fairly benign, but they can go straight into the more severe, like payoffs, ticket fixing, bribery, extortion, theft. No, I want to cross the bridge. Generally speaking, corruption is divided into two categories, all right? You have grass-eating corruption, and then you have meat-eating corruption. What is the difference between the two? Grass-eating corruption is the lesser. It is the intent of the officer that makes it grass-eating, okay? A grass-eating corrupted officer, what makes them a grass-eater is the fact that they don't actively search out a benefit or corrupt behavior, okay? They don't actively try to partake in it. However, if the opportunity arises and it shows itself and it's offered to them, they're not necessarily going to refuse it. That is grass eating, okay? So a real world example would be, okay, say, one of these fine lawmen here, pull me over because I'm riding my horse a little too fast through town. And they say, "Sir, we don't like your kind here. We ride carriages in this town. We don't ride our horses. You're going to need to pay a fine, go down to the precinct and pay that off." Well, I say, being Arthur Morgan, who is a flush with cash, say, "Officer, I'm,
in God we must."
And he goes, "Thank you, sir. I think that'll be all for today," and walks away. He didn't actively ask for the bribe. He didn't prompt it, but I offered, and he accepted. That is grass-eating corruption. Now, meat-eating corruption can be in the same exact... I'm just going to leave my horse here, and he will be fine, I'm sure. We're going to be Arthur Morgan walking through this fancy town here. But meat-eating corruption, I'm going to at least first give an example of it using that same example, right? Again, I'm riding my horse through town. A police officer comes up and goes, "We don't like your kind riding our horses through town. We have trolley cars and carriages and all that. We don't walk the streets. That's jaywalking. But however, if we deal with this right here, I'll accept your fine right here, and we can call it a day." That's meat-eating. That's the same offense. It's bribery. But it's how it's carried out. Both are offensive. Let's just put that out there, right? It's a coin, a bite to eat, anything? I don't got anything, sorry. As he says with $800 in his pocket. Let us walk through this beautiful little garden. Actually, you know what? I'm going to give this guy 25 cents. I got cash. When you're feeling good, you're flush with cash. Share the wealth, right? And he gave me something for it. Snake oil, which is nice, I guess. But to get back to gratuities, let's start with, when it comes to corruption, right? I talked about the grass eating versus meat eating generally being the intent of the officer. The problem is that corruption rears its ugly head as a process. Why? So what are the reasons why an officer can become corrupt? Well, there are plenty of reasons. The reasons for, however, can be just for personal gain, right? It can be because maybe there's some antisocial personality things going on. We talked if you were here last time, we talked about a certain kind of warrior mentality within the police. So there are many reasons why a police officer can move towards corruption. However, much like how we talked about last class, when we talked about morality and kind of the evolution of morality through behavior, corruption acts kind of the same way. It is a continuum, if you will, or a process, right? You don't just start with, sexually assaulting inmates, right? Like in the local prison as well. Again, if we need more topics to talk about. I shouldn't laugh about that. That's an awful fucking topic. And you're not going to start out with like an officer, aiding drug dealers and like taking a fee for like letting them go. No, it's going to start fairly light. It's going to start with accepting gratuities, right? So Dunkin' Donuts, everybody knows what Dunkin' Donuts is. The local Dunkin' Donuts offers free coffees to all police officers. Seems like a nice thing. Oh, thanking the police officers for their duties and all that. Well, the problem with that is that is a form of corruption if the police officers accept it. But why? It's just a free coffee. The problem is that there's an insinuation, right? Someone could be led to believe that because I'm giving you this, maybe later you can give me something in exchange. There's this perception, if you will. I give you free coffee, I give you free donuts. So you have the police hanging around the Dunkin' Donuts more often, right? So they're acting as a deterrent to crime, thereby, again, kind of discriminating against other businesses maybe, because, well, this guy gives us free coffee, so we're going to hang around them more often. Which then is going to sort of incentivize other businesses to start giving discounts to police, which is a slippery slope that you don't want to go down. But then what happens when that police officer then pulls over the owner of that Dunkin' Donuts? Well, that owner of Dunkin' Donuts is going to be like, hey, I own that Dunkin' Donuts down at the corner of Washington and Vine. Can we just kind of forget this right here? That's the perception. That's what you're trying to avoid. That's why accepting of gratuities can't happen, all right? The really ethical officers out there, and they do exist, there's plenty of them. You'll see what happens because, the guys and girls at the cash register, they don't have a choice, right? Their manager told them, you have to give that police officer free coffee, because it's kind of like the policy of that individual store. The good police officers, and again, there's plenty of them, will leave a tip in the sum of what the coffee would have cost, and you'll see that, or just leave a $5 or something like that. That is like the best way out of that situation, to hold your head high in the sense that yes, I am maintaining my ethical standards while acknowledging that you're trying to bribe me, essentially is what it is. But if you do have an officer that does accept that gratuity, that's how it starts, because again, moral behavior can be influenced by past actions. So it was really easy to accept that one little gratuity. Well, maybe, yes, I do let that guy off the hook when I see him. Or maybe, the next time is if a guy who I don't know, who isn't a business owner, but maybe he gives me the amount of money I need for a coffee, maybe I'll let him go then. And it builds and builds and builds. And if gone unchecked, can turn into the extreme versions of corruption that you see in the news, that make the national media, right? That turn into pay-to-play schemes or, the Kids for Cash scheme. That's the danger, right? So, some people want to say that, well, what's, a little gratuity here or there? Well, the problem is that it's a slippery slope. This is one of those things where it does seem, when it comes to human behavior, there is a continuum. There is a process that people go through and can easily fall into a pattern of behavior that can really hurt people. But more extreme versions of corruption can be abuse of authority. Now, abuse of authority can come in a couple of ways, right? We could see an abuse of authority in kind of those discretional use of force. This is where discretion, and look at that dog. He is messy. I wonder if I can pet him. I can. Oh, he's all mangy. Look at him. Oh. I'm going to study him. He's a mangy bloodhound. Well, oh, and he's happy now. Look at him with his wagging his tail. Sorry, I had to like stop the lesson for a second because this is fun. Thank God I get to edit this part out. Wish I had something to give them. Abuse of authority is essentially when a police officer uses their ability to influence an investigation, to influence a prosecution, to influence behavior of others out on the street, in order to leverage that power that they are granted through the social contract. Whenever they leverage that power in a way that was not anticipated by, the duties of their job, that is abuse of authority. And it can come in the form of a physical abuse, right? Physically assaulting members of the public, or even taking it out on those suspects of an investigation, right? Using those third-degree tactics. Psychological abuse that a police officer can exercise on an individual of the public, or again, a suspect during the course of an investigation. Don't want to get hit by the trolley car. Or legal abuse, and legal abuse being the altering of evidence, potentially, or influencing the prosecution, or, again, choosing to exercise their powers and their discretion in a way that benefits some to the detriment of others. That's the extreme end of corruption. When you get that kind of corruption, that's when you're getting a little too far gone. So, how do we fight corruption? This is the last thing we'll talk about, and I guess where we'll end it. You fight corruption a couple ways. First way, kind of talked about last week, where you have to install leadership, appropriate, good leadership, ethics training within police departments, within institutions is the word I'm looking for. That's how you fight it at a cultural level, at a systemic level. But what about those rotten apples? Right? And I know sometimes they say, oh, well, corruption isn't rampant, it's just a couple of rotten apples. Well, the phrase is a few rotten apples spoil the batch, right? So you need to cut those rotten apples out. You need to get rid of them. So when you get, there's another mangy dog, and he's pooping. How about that? Problem is, there's a practicality matter there, is that because of the way that our justice system is built and the disjointed nature of individual police departments, it's really hard for one department to fire a police officer and then prevent another department from hiring that police officer. There are plenty of articles out there about police officers who have been fired multiple times from multiple police departments for abuse of authority or corrupt behavior or abuse of discretion. Again, utilization of force when it's unwarranted. But then just getting them rehired again because they move the next town over, they move a state over. Because files aren't shared, right? There isn't like a catalog of corrupt police officers out there that a police department can look to in order to, unlike for myself, there's ratemyprofessor.com. Like any school can go on and look at it, any student can go on and look at it. But police officers, there isn't anything like that. Arguably, there can't be anything like that because then it would put the officer in danger kind of thing. That being said, there needs to be a method in order to cut the rotten apples out and prevent them from getting back into the system. That's the rotten apple. Systemic problems, gotta work from the top down. And when the whole barrel's rotten, maybe it's just throw the whole thing out and start over again. Again, like Minneapolis is doing. So there's no UCR for departments to share about potentially bad officers? No, there is not. In fact, before when I was talking about use of force incidents and the fact that about 1,000 people a year are killed by police, that isn't anything that is tracked by the federal government or even the states. It's actually, that number comes from the Washington Post, who undertook a project starting back in 2015 and has been doing it every year since, where they scour the nation for news articles about police shootings and catalog them and then record them and then are able to, it's a searchable document that you can find on the Washington Post's website. So that's what they are doing in order to track those numbers, because they're not tracked by the police. They're not tracked by the federal government. They're not tracked by federal agencies or anything like that. Anyways, to get back into, the best way to fight corruption is to, just like with a messy house, the best way to have a clean house is to keep it clean in the first place, right? Prevent corruption is the best way. How does one prevent corruption? Well, look at the causes of corruption, right? A police officer will get into corrupt behavior because they don't make enough money, right? Police officers in a lot of places don't get paid enough. What the hell is happening with my screen right here? Oh, that lady like somehow got inside my camera. So increase the pay of the officers. Easy. They don't need to look elsewhere for their money. Eliminate the laws that are kind of overburdensome on society. Decriminalization of marijuana is one of the steps that's being taken for that, right? Civilian review boards. Those are being established all over the nation currently, and I believe that there may be one coming in Scranton at some point, which is cool. Improved training. De-escalation training is a big thing that helps fight corruption and abuse of discretion. De-escalation training basically focuses on an officer, using their words, right? Like you would tell a baby, use your words. Using their words to de-escalate a situation as opposed to immediately going for the use of force. But then also, things that have been happening. Body cams. Instituting body cams has been one of the best things for fighting both abuse of discretion and abuse of authority incidences, because police officers know they're being watched. And a little side effect is that it also has prevented use of force, because people know that they're members of the public know that they are on camera as well, so they treat the police a little bit more kindly now. Actually, it's interesting. And then, of course, just keep track, conduct surveys, conduct what they call morality surveys, which are, it sounds awful. Sounds like something that is like antiquated and kind of comes straight out of the 1600s. But actually, it's more so like where you survey the police department to kind of gauge the moral temperature, if you will, right? To gauge, that whole blue curtain of silence and their views on, accepting gratuities and what's not. Just a couple of types, and there are plenty more that I'm sure I'm missing. But those are just a couple ways to help fight corruption and to help prevent abuses of discretion. And this is where I'm going to end it tonight, because I've been talking for just about an hour, and I would like the edited version to be a little bit under the 40-minute mark that it was last week. So, if you like this content, please follow, please subscribe, please like, please whatever the button is that you need to press to indicate that please give me more of this, please do that. I do this for my job teaching as a professor, but I also do it because I enjoy spreading knowledge. I enjoy playing video games, and this is a way to kind of combine my two loves. So every Tuesday night, twitch.tv/FPSkra, be here streaming one of these big brain lectures where we play video games and we get into some trouble. I got into a little bit of trouble this morning, and talk about certain topics, and topics will change every week. These videos go up on YouTube every Sunday night. I try to get them up because they need to go up for Canvas. The channel FPSkra, and you can find me talking about these in edited versions. Leave a comment, maybe leave a comment on a video on a topic that you would like me to talk about, because at some point I'm going to run out of class topics. Other than that, have a good night, and I will see you next time.